You put on the steel before the sun rises. It is a voluntary prison of metal and leather. It is summer in northern Italy in 1279, and the heat is already creeping in like a cruel promise at dawn. The familiar weight of the armor presses down on your shoulders as you adjust the worn straps with your fingers. 25 pounds of protection, 25 pounds of martyrdom. The helmet is always last. Before lowering it over your face, you take a deep breath. One last breath of fresh air. Through the narrow window of the camp, your eyes take in the horizon, a sky that still holds traces of night, but which will soon turn into a blue oven above your head. There is beauty in this final unobstructed view. There is a silent farewell in that last breath. You lower your helmet. The world immediately shrinks to the narrow slits through which you can see. Sounds become distant and filtered through metal. Your own breathing echoes back, amplified as if you were inside an iron cave. And so another day begins. While the other knights regale the tavern patrons with tales of bravery and conquest at night, you harbor a secret that never makes it into the troubadour's songs. Your most relentless enemy is not armed with a sword or spear. It burns inside. Your own armor. "Vincenzo," someone calls outside. "Form up in 10 minutes. You don't answer. You're saving your saliva just to breathe. The heat inside the armor is a living entity. You can feel it growing as the sun rises in the sky. At first, you just feel discomfort on your back where the padded linen gambeson absorbs your sweat. Then it becomes a constant pressure on your temples where the helmet is squeezing your skull. Finally, it turns into a furnace enveloping every inch of your body. You march with the others. Heavy boots kick up dust from the road. The pace is slow and steady. Conserving energy isn't just a strategy. It's a matter of survival. Every step is a negotiation between you and the surrounding metal. Every movement requires you to convince your muscles, which would rather give up, to keep going. Sweat begins to drip inside your gambeson. First in isolated drops that run down your spine, then in streams that run down your armpits, chest, and forehead. The salt stings your eyes, but you cannot wipe it away. Your hands are trapped in the gauntlets, and your helmet is sealed. "Water in an hour," someone shouts ahead. 1 hour. 60 minutes, measured by the beat of your racing heart. 60 eternities, measured in drops of sweat. You've learned to live in increments like this. Small promises that allow you to carry on. Small goals that keep you sane. 1 hour for water. 2 for rest. Until sunset, you can remove your helmet. Under the rising sun, the armor is no longer your second skin. It is your prison. It is your purgatory. If you're enjoying the story so far, subscribe to the channel and give it a like. Let's continue. Thirst is your constant companion. It begins as an uncomfortable feeling in your throat and develops into an obsession. Your tongue swells, your lips crack. You can taste your own blood when you run your tongue over them. When it is up, the water break finally arrives. You lift the visor of your helmet with trembling fingers. This maneuver takes practice, opening just enough to drink without exposing your face too much to the relentless sun. The canteen reaches your hands, heavy and blessed. You tilt your head back, calculating the perfect angle. The water flows, half into your mouth and half down your chin and neck, seeping into your gambeson. The pleasure is almost painful. The lukewarm water tastes of old leather from the canteen, but seems like the finest Tuscan wine. You drink with measured urgency. If you go too fast, you'll vomit everything back into your helmet. A lesson you learned during your first summer. If you're too slow, the commander will order you to continue marching before you've quenched your thirst. 3 gulps, 4, 5. The canteen is taken from your hands. "Enough," says the squire. "We need to conserve." You close the visor, your prison is restored. Your thirst, which was momentarily quenched, is already beginning to return. But at least you've gained a few hours of respite. Small victories. That's what your life consists of now. Through the cracks in your helmet, you can see only more road on the horizon, more dust. more heat rippling over the distant hills, and yet you keep going, one step, another step, not for glory, not for honor, but because stopping means death. At night, when you can finally take off your armor, you find new wounds. The ritual of dismantling it is as painful as putting it on. Each piece reveals a map of suffering engraved on your skin. Your squire helps you with the straps on your back that you can't reach. The leather is hard, dried out by heat and sweat. The buckles are hot to the touch and have left red marks where they pressed against your skin during the day. When the breastplate finally comes off, you take your first deep breath in hours. Your lungs expand fully, unrestrained by metal. Next come the greaves that protect your legs. As you remove your boots, pieces of skin come off with them. Your feet are a battlefield of burst blisters, bloody calluses, and darkened nails. The smell is pungent, a mixture of old sweat, blood, and rotting leather. You no longer care. Disgust is a luxury that knights cannot afford. Finally, the helmet. You lift it carefully and a cloud of steam escapes as if your head has spent the day in a boiler. In a way, it has. Your hair is soaked and stuck to your skull. The edges of the helmet have marked your face, making it look like it belongs to another man, red and swollen with deep grooves where the metal pressed against the flesh. "Good God, Vincenzo," murmurs a young knight as he passes by. "You look like you've been boiled alive." You just nod. Words are too precious to waste on. Obvious answers. In the camp, other men are already eating, drinking, and laughing. You walk away, looking for a shady corner. Your body is crying out for rest, but there are rituals to perform first. The armor must be cleaned. The sweat of the day must be wiped off the metal to prevent rust. The protection that keeps you alive requires constant maintenance. You begin to clean each piece with a damp cloth. Your fingers tremble with exhaustion, but you persevere. Tomorrow, before dawn, it will all begin again. Dreams come in fragments when sleep finally finds you. You see the vineyards of San Miniato, your homeland. The intense green of the leaves contrasts with the reddish brown of the earth. You can smell the sweet scent of freshly fermenting grapes in autumn when they are crushed and the wine begins its transformation. In the dream, you walk barefoot among the vines and feel the cool earth beneath your feet. The air is clean and scented with wild thyme and oregano growing at the vineyard's edge. Your skin is bare and free, refreshed by the gentle breeze coming down from the hills, and there is a woman. Her face is hidden in the shadows, but you recognize her smile. You recognize the sound of her laughter. She says something you cannot quite understand, something about dying inside your armor before experiencing glory. In the dream, you laugh. The prophecy seems absurd under the Tuscan sky, among the vineyards brimming with promise. You wake, up with a start, your body covered in a thin layer of cold sweat. For a moment, you don't recognize where you are. Then reality returns. The silent camp, the cold stars above, and the hard ground beneath your back. And tomorrow, steel awaits. You turn to the side and look at your armor, which is organized and ready for the next day. In the dark, the metal pieces look like the remains of a dismembered animal, ready to swallow you again at dawn. Prophecy or curse, you murmur into the night air. No one answers. Only the dry Italian summer wind carries dust and empty promises of rain. Dawn brings with it a ritual that your body knows better than your mind. Your fingers move automatically as you adjust the straps, tighten the buckles, and check each piece of armor before putting it on. First comes the gambeson, the padded tunic that serves as the first layer of protection. Yesterday you washed it in the stream and left it to dry overnight. It still retains the smell of previous days, a mixture of old sweat and the olive oil you use to treat the fabric. The thick linen rubs against your unhealed wounds, but you ignore the pain. It's only the beginning of the day. Next is the chainmail. The familiar weight falls on your shoulders like a sentence. 20,000 small intertwined iron rings, each one forged individually by some anonymous blacksmith, a masterpiece of protection that now serves as your personal instrument of torture. The metal is cold to the touch, the only time of day when the armor offers any relief. Then the plates. Piece by piece, you transform your body into a fortress. Knee pads, thigh guards, back plates, arm guards, and gauntlets. Each element has its place and specific order. The breastplate comes last, two halves that meet around your torso to protect vital organs while compressing your diaphragm and limiting your ability to breathe fully. A young squire approaches to help with the back straps. His hands are inexperienced and hesitant. Tighter, you instruct. If it's loose, the plate will move and cut into the flesh. But sir, it's already so tight. Tighter, you repeat, without emotion. Better discomfort than death. The boy obeys, pulling the straps until you feel the familiar pressure against your ribs. Satisfied, you nod. Only the helmet remains. Before putting it on, you wet a piece of cloth with a mixture of water and vinegar, a trick you learned from an old knight during your first summer. Strategically placing the cloth inside the helmet will provide a few minutes of relief before it completely dries from the heat of your skull. The sun has not yet risen fully, but the sky is already brightening on the horizon. Another day begins. Your life is now measured in cycles of steel and sun, of dressing and undressing, of survival. Hunger feels different inside armor. It is not the pleasurable hunger you experienced in the vineyards when you worked from morning until noon, savoring freshly baked bread, fresh cheese, and olives afterwards. This hunger is distant and almost theoretical. Your body is too preoccupied with the heat to fully register the need for food. During the midday break, while the other men devour their rations, you eat methodically without pleasure. The bread is hard, the cheese is dry, and the salted meat is almost inedible because it causes thirst. But you eat. It's just fuel. With your visor raised just enough, you push small pieces of food into your parched throat. You chew little. Swallowing is hard enough. Taste is secondary to necessity. Occasionally, you take a sip of watered-down wine, never pure, as the heat intensifies its effects, and you cannot afford to feel dizzy. "How can you eat like that, Vincenzo?" asks a younger knight watching your methodical ritual. "I would die if I couldn't take off my helmet to eat properly." You don't explain that it's precisely to avoid dying that you keep your helmet on. The midday sun would burn your exposed face in minutes. You've learned to sacrifice small comforts to ensure survival. Instead, you just shrug, a movement almost imperceptible beneath the layers of metal. "Custom," you reply, sparing your words. The young man doesn't understand, but one day he will. If he survives the summers, that is. If he learns that armor protects not only against enemy swords, but against nature itself. Against nature, no man wins. Only negotiates small truces. You finish eating, while the others prepare to resume the march. The commander shouts orders. The horses are restless in the heat and begin to neigh. You close your visor, and the world is once again filtered through narrow metal slits. The food sits heavily in your stomach, but at least it has numbed the hunger. Small victories. That's all that's left. The first time you faint, you are marching through the hottest part of the day. The sun is directly overhead, turning your helmet into an oven against your skull. There is no shade on the dusty road, only relentless sunlight reflecting off your armor, creating a vicious circle of heat. The signs come gradually, though you try to ignore them. First, your vision blurs. The slits in your helmet seem narrower and images are less defined. Then there is a persistent ringing in your ears, drowning out the sounds around you. Your steps become uncertain, as if the ground is undulating beneath your feet. The thought comes, distant, "I'm burning inside." Then the world disappears. When you come to, you're lying on the ground. Someone has removed your helmet and is pouring water onto your face. The liquid runs down your throat and neck, seeping into your armor. The sensation is so intense that it borders on pain. "Get up, Vincenzo," says a voice. You recognize Donato, a veteran whose scars tell the story of 10 campaigns. This is no place to sleep. There is no genuine concern in his voice, only the practical efficiency of someone who has seen men fall from the heat before. Someone who knows that the weakness of one person holds everyone back. You try to stand. Your limbs no longer seem to belong to you. The weight of your normally familiar armor now feels crushing. Strong hands grab you by the arms and lift you up. The world spins once, then stabilizes. "Can you walk?" Donato asks. You nod, though you're not sure if you can. Your helmet is placed back on your head, feeling even hotter than before after sitting in the sun. The prison closes around your skull once more. "Drink," Donato orders, handing you a canteen. Slowly. You obey, lifting the visor just enough. The water is hot, but it feels like liquid life going down your throat. You return the canteen, knowing you must ration it. The march continues. That night, when you examine your reflection, in a puddle of water, you barely recognize yourself. Your face is caked with salt and dust, and your deep-set eyes seem to belong to another man. Eyes that have seen beyond life, beyond death, beyond time itself. You touch the water with your fingertips, and your reflection breaks into concentric circles, like your identity, which dissolves a little more each day inside the steel. You should wear wet cloths under your armor, advises Matteo. A night. From Florence, as everyone prepares their mounts the following dawn. "My cousin fought in Palestine. He said the Saracens wore wet tunics under their coats." You don't answer right away, busy adjusting your horse's saddle. The animal, a bay stallion named Fausto, seems as resigned as you are. His dark eyes reflect the same weariness and acceptance of fate. "I've tried," you finally say. The fabric boils against the skin. It creates blisters worse than the dry heat. Matteo looks disappointed that he can't help. He's new to the company and hasn't yet endured a full summer in armor. He still believes there's an easy solution to this metal hell. "What about vinegar? I hear it cools you down." For a few minutes, then the smell gets trapped in the helmet. It becomes another torment. There is silence between you. Matteo sighs and tightens the straps of his own armor. He has not yet learned resignation. He still fights against the inevitable, seeking comfort where there is none. How do you survive this, Vincenzo, year after year? The question hangs in the morning air. You look at the horizon, where the first hint of pink signals the start of another merciless day. How do you survive? There is no easy answer. There is no secret to share. One breath at a time, you finally say, one step at a time, one day at a time. It's not the answer that Matteo was hoping for. He wanted a trick, a technique, or a solution. Instead, he is given the stark reality. There is no way to beat the heat. There's only one way to endure it. You mount in silence. The horses form an orderly line. The commander shouts orders, and the company begins to move. The sun rises fully, casting long golden rays through the dust kicked up by the hooves. It is beautiful and deadly, like a well-forged blade. Inside your armor, you can already feel the first beads of sweat trickling down your back. The cycle begins again. Your armpits are raw. The constant friction of the chainmail against your damp skin has created wounds that won't heal. Every movement of your arms is an exercise in controlled pain. At night, you examine the damage by the light of a small fire. The wounds look worrying, red and inflamed with whitish edges that suggest infection. You have seen men die for less, brave warriors who survived bloody battles, only to die from small, neglected wounds. "You need to cauterize that," says a voice behind you. You turn around and see Father Tomas, the chaplain who accompanies the company. He is a thin man with a gray beard and eyes that have seen too much. He kneels beside you and examines the ear, wound with the clinical objectivity of someone who treats the dying. I have an ointment, he continues, rummaging through his leather bag, made from honey, vinegar, and herbs. It won't heal it completely, but it will stop it from getting worse. Thank you, Father, you murmur, surprised by the offer. Rarely does anyone notice your silent suffering. Rarely does anyone care. The priest applies the mixture with surprisingly delicate fingers for someone who spends their days on horseback with soldiers. The ointment burns like fire, but you show no pain. Years spent wearing armor have taught you how to hide your suffering. Why do you continue, Vincenzo? The priest asks as he works. I saw your file. You've served your time. You could have returned to San Miniato after the campaign in Pisa. The question takes you by surprise. Why do you continue? The real answer is too complex to articulate. Perhaps it's because there's nothing left for you in San Miniato, or perhaps because after years of war, peace seems more frightening than battle. Or maybe it's because, in a twisted way, you've grown accustomed to this life, to the brutal simplicity of daily survival. I don't know how to do anything else. Father, you reply, knowing that this is only part of the truth. Father Tomas finishes bandaging you in silence. His hands, which bless and absolve, now treat your wounded flesh with the same reverence. When he has finished, he looks into your eyes. We all know how to do more than we think we can, son. When the time comes, he walks away, leaving you with your wounds treated and your thoughts troubled. All around you, the camp is preparing for nightfall. Men talk in low voices, clean their weapons, and repair equipment. The relentless routine of war continues. You look at your armor, carefully organized for the next day. It is an empty exoskeleton, waiting to swallow you again at dawn. When the time comes, you repeat to yourself, not knowing what that really means. The day when the sky is covered with clouds arrives without warning. You wake up, prepared for the usual torment, but as you emerge from your tent, you notice a difference in the air. It has a gray, damp, almost palpable quality. The sun is there somewhere beyond the cloud cover, but its fiercest rays are contained. The company prepares for the daily march with the same mechanical efficiency. No one mentions the clouds, as if acknowledging their presence might make them disappear. But you notice the furtive glances at the sky. You see the hope contained within their normally resigned expressions. Inside the armor, the difference is immediate. The metal does not burn against your skin. Though the air is still confined and stifling inside the helmet, it no longer seems intent on extracting every drop of moisture from your body. It's as if someone has turned down the heat under a boiling pot. The water still boils, just more slowly. The march begins, and you feel a strange lightness in your steps. The weight of the armor remains the same, 30 pounds of metal, distributed evenly across your body, but without the oppressive heat, it feels less like a prison and more like armor. It is what it was designed to be, protection, not punishment. At noon, when the heat normally reaches its peak, you can still think clearly. Your body still sweats, but not with the desperation of someone being cooked alive. Your lungs fill more completely. Your muscles respond more readily. During the rest break, you move away from the group. You find a lone, twisted, and dry olive tree that is still alive and sit under its sparse branches. For the first time in months, you can observe the world around you without the filter of constant pain. The rolling hills of Tuscany stretch to the horizon, mottled with olive green and gold. Small farms with stone houses and wooden fences dot the landscape. In the distance, the outline of a walled city emerges like a dream of civilization, perhaps Siena, or perhaps some smaller town. You take a deep breath. You listen to your heart beating softly and rhythmically. You look at your hands, which are trembling as you remove your mittens. To your surprise, you feel a lump of emotion rising in your throat, as unexpected as the clouds themselves. For a brief moment, you feel like crying, not out of pain or despair, but because you had forgotten what it was like to feel anything other than pain. You had forgotten that there was a world beyond torment. You had forgotten what it was like to live. But the moment passes too quickly. A distant thunderclap announces that the clouds have come bearing not only blessings, but threats too. The commander shouts orders to resume the march. The truce will soon be over. But something has changed inside you. Something has awakened. It's as if a veil has been lifted momentarily, allowing you to glimpse another way of life. You put your gauntlets back on. You stand up. You take one last deep breath, filling your lungs with the damp air. Then you return to formation. The clouds will not last. The sun will return, relentless as ever. But for now, you have a memory to carry you through the scorching days ahead. The memory of a moment of clarity, a moment of peace. When the rain finally arrives, it is an ambiguous blessing. It starts with heavy, scattered drops that clink against your metal armor like tiny hammers. This sound echoes inside your helmet, creating a strange, private music that only you can hear. Soon the sky opens up completely. Water falls in dense curtains, turning the road into mud and reducing visibility to a few meters. The commander orders you to keep marching. Stopping would mean setting up camp in the mud, which is an even worse prospect than the rain itself. Inside the armor, you experience a complex dance of sensations. On the one hand, the relief from the heat is immense. The water cools the metal, creating a temporary barrier against the furnace that normally consumes you. On the other hand, new discomforts arise. Rain seeps through the joints of the armor, soaking the gambeson. Once wet, the gambeson weighs twice as much and rubs against your wounds like sandpaper. The boots sink into the mud with every step, creating a suction that must be overcome to move forward. The helmet, which was designed with small ventilation openings, now allows water to enter in constant streams that run down your face and neck, accumulating in the lowest points of the armor. But you don't complain, not even internally. Trading. Heat for humidity is a deal you would make 1,000 times over. "Damn rain," grumbles Matteo, marching beside you. "My armor is already rusting. It'll take days to dry properly." You look at him through the slits in your helmet, surprised by his complaint. How could anyone prefer the merciless sun to this liquid gift? "Rust can be removed," you reply, your voice echoing strangely inside your wet helmet. "Burnt flesh cannot?" Matteo looks at you for a moment, then nods slowly in understanding. He is young and has not yet experienced a full summer in full armor. He does not yet know the true meaning of torment. The march continues into the afternoon, the formation less organized than usual, as the men struggle against the mud and reduced visibility. Occasionally, lightning flashes across the sky, followed by thunder that makes the horses whinny nervously. At one point, an intense flash of lightning illuminates the sky, and you see a stone structure half hidden among trees in the distance. A monastery, perhaps, or an abandoned inn. The vision lasts only a second before darkness returns, but it is enough to spark a glimmer of hope. "Did you see that?" asks Donato, who is marching a few steps ahead. You nod, sparing words, as always. "Shelter," the veteran continues. "If we're lucky, the commander will allow us a longer break." The idea of taking off your armor before nightfall, drying off by a fire and sleeping under a roof instead of in a damp tent, seems so luxurious that it almost hurts to think about it. You control your hope. You have learned that expectations often lead to disappointment. However, as the company approaches the structure, it reveals itself to be a small Benedictine monastery with low walls and a modest bell tower rising above the trees. The commander sends a messenger ahead, and soon the doors open. The monks, accustomed to offering shelter to pilgrims and travelers, welcome the company with the quiet efficiency of those who serve God in remote places. For the first time in weeks, you will sleep under a stone roof, a small mercy in a world that rarely offers them. The monastery is a world apart. Within its walls, time seems to flow differently. The monks move silently, each busy with their tasks like perfectly adjusted cogs in an invisible machine. In the common room, large fires have been lit to dry armor and clothing. The heat is different to that of the sun, constant but gentle, without the sun's punishing rays. The smell of burning wood mingles with the aroma of bread baking in the kitchens and medicinal herbs being prepared in the infirmary. You sit on a wooden bench watching your armor laid out methodically near the fire. The metal pieces reflect the flames, creating hypnotic patterns of light and shadow. For the first time in days, you are completely free of the weight of steel. Your body feels strangely light, as though you are floating. An elderly monk approaches, carrying a basin of hot water and clean cloths. Without saying a word, he kneels down and starts cleaning the wounds on your legs and feet. His hands are steady and gentle, moving with the precision of someone who has treated many warriors before. "Thank you, brother," you murmur, feeling uneasy about accepting the help of a man who has dedicated his life to God. The monk looks up, his clear eyes meeting yours. "To serve is our calling," he replies simply before returning to his work. As he cleans your wounds, you look around the room. The other knights have scattered into small groups. Some are sleeping, exhausted after days of marching in the rain. Others clean and repair their equipment. Some talk in low voices, sharing stories, or simply enjoying this rare moment of rest. Matteo is sitting near a window, writing on a small piece of parchment. His lips move silently as he composes his letter, crossing out and rewriting words. Perhaps a letter home, to a wife, a mother, or a sister, someone waiting for his return. You wonder if there is anyone waiting for you in San Miniato. Years have passed since you left. Was the woman of your dreams real, or just a figment of your weary mind? You can no longer clearly remember her face. Only fragments remain. The sound of her laughter, the smell of her freshly washed hair, and the feel of her fingers intertwined with yours. The monk finishes bandaging you and stands up with a groan, his joints protesting against the movement. "Rest," he advises. "Your wounds need time." Time. The one thing there is never enough of. The one thing that cannot be bought, not even by the wealthy merchants of Florence with their coffers full of gold florins. How long will we stay here, you ask, knowing it's not the monk's decision, but unable to stop yourself? "The storm will last at least until tomorrow," the monk replies. "After that, I cannot say. But as long as you are under our roof, you will find rest." He walks away, carrying the blood and dust-stained basin of water with him. You lean your head against the stone wall, feeling the exhaustion of the past few months finally catch up with you. Your eyes close almost of their own accord. For the first time in a long time, you sleep without dreaming of fire. The rain continues the next day, and after consulting the monks about the state of the roads, the commander decides to stay another day. The news spreads through the monastery like a benevolent wind, bringing with it an almost festive feeling. A whole day without marching, a whole day without the weight of armor. You spend the morning helping in the kitchen, not out of obligation. The monks do not require work in exchange for shelter, but out of a need to keep your hands busy and feel useful in a way that does not involve killing or marching. Your tasks are simple: peeling vegetables, feeding the fire, and carrying water from the well. Repetitive work that allows your mind to wander. The heat from the ovens is intense, but it is different to the heat of armor in the sun. This heat produces something: bread, soup, and sustenance. It has a purpose. One of the younger monks works beside you, kneading bread with precise rhythmic movements. You watch his calloused, scarred hands, the hands of a warrior trying to do the work of a baker. "You've done this before," the monk observes. You consider lying and saying that you have never worked with food before. That would be more consistent with the image that others have of you, the silent knight, the man of steel. But here, away from prying eyes, you allow a small truth to escape. "My father was a baker," you reply, continuing to peel a turnip with the precision of someone wielding a dagger. "In San Miniato, The monk smiles, his hands never stopping their kneading motion. And how did a baker's son become a knight? The question opens doors in your memory that have remained closed for years. Images come to mind in flashes. The hot oven in your father's bakery, the flour in the air like perpetual snow, and the smell of fermenting dough. Then, the knight who passed through town and was impressed by your strength when you carried sacks of flour. The offer of training, the promise of glory and riches. Youthful folly, you finally reply, not wanting to elaborate. The monk accepts your answer with a nod. He understands the value of silence and the power of what remains unsaid. In this place of contemplation and prayer, words are precious and are only used when necessary. You continue working side by side in a silence that needs no filling. The hours pass, marked only by the movement of the sun behind the clouds and the bell that calls the monks to their regular prayers. In the afternoon, once the kitchen has finally calmed down after the main meal, you step out into the cloister. The rain continues to fall, but more gently now, creating a silvery curtain around the square courtyard. The sound of water hitting the ancient stones has an almost musical quality, a steady rhythm that invites reflection. You walk slowly around the covered perimeter, watching the drops form small streams between the stones. Each step is deliberate and considered. Without the weight of your armor, your body feels as though it belongs to someone else, lighter, more agile, and less affected by pain. In one corner of the cloister, you find a small statue of the Virgin Mary. Her expression is serene and timeless, her eyes fixed on a point beyond the material world. You stop in front of her not out of particular devotion, but because you are drawn to that serenity which seems so distant from your own existence. She understands suffering, says a voice behind you. You turn to see the abbot, a thin man, with a white beard and piercing eyes. He approaches with silent steps and joins you in contemplating the statue. She saw her son die, the abbot continues. She knew pain that no armor could stop. You don't respond, feeling unsure about how to engage in this conversation about faith and suffering. Your relationship with God is complicated, a mixture of respect, fear, and quiet resentment towards the life you lead. "What do you seek, knight?" asks the abbot, his eyes now fixed on you. The question is simple, yet it resonates within you as if shouted from a cliff, echoing endlessly. What do you seek? Glory. You have seen enough to know that it is a fleeting illusion. Wealth? What would you do with it other than buy more armor? Peace? Perhaps, but would you recognize it if you found it? I don't know, Father, you reply honestly. The abbot smiles, not a smile of scorn or pity, but one of genuine understanding. That, he says, is the wisest answer I've heard today. The storm passes during the night, and with morning comes the inevitable order to leave. You put on the armor with the mechanical efficiency acquired over the years, each piece finding its familiar place on your body. The steel is cold to the touch, almost comforting after days of rest. But you know it is a temporary illusion. Soon the sun will emerge fully, and the metal will begin its daily transformation into a furnace. The truce offered by the monastery will end as soon as you pass through the gates. In the courtyard, the knights are gathering, checking their equipment and saddling their mounts. There is a different quality to the air, not just the freshness after the rain, but something less tangible. It's as if the brief interlude of peace has reminded everyone that they are more than just instruments of war. Beneath the steel and leather, they are still men. The abbot is present for the farewell, offering blessings and small bags of medicinal herbs for the journey. When it is your turn, you kneel more out of respect for the man than for the institution he represents. You will find what you seek. Vincenzo de San Miniato, the abbot whispers, his voice low so that only you can hear. Perhaps not where you expect. Before you can ask him to explain, he has moved on to the next knight. You stand up, adjust your helmet, and mount Fausto, who seems as reluctant as you are to leave the monastery's comfort. The company forms an orderly column and passes through the gates. The sound of hooves on the wet road creates a hypnotic rhythm. You look back one last time and see the monks lined up on the steps of the small church. Their figures shrink as you move further away. The road winds through green hills transformed by the recent rain. The air is clean and heavy with the scent of wet earth and vegetation. Through the cracks in your helmet, you observe the reborn landscape, aware that its beauty is transient. Soon, summer will reassert its dominance, and the hills will return to their golden, drought-stricken hues. The sun rises higher, and, as expected, your armor begins to heat up. But something is different. It's not just the milder weather after the storm. It's something inside you. It's as if the brief respite in the monastery had awakened something that had lain dormant for so long that you had forgotten its existence. A voice. Not the resigned voice of a survivor who merely endures each day, but an older, truer voice. It is the voice of the baker's son who dreamed of achieving more than just needing bread for the rest of his life. The voice that made him accept the knight's offer all those years ago. Now that voice asks a simple yet devastating question. Is this all there is? March, sweat, bleed, and survive, only to march again tomorrow. Is this the fate you chose? Is this the life you traded for the warmth of your father's hearth? You have no answer. You just keep marching, one step after another, as the sun rises higher and your armor once again becomes your familiar prison. But the question remains, throbbing like a fresh wound. You know with a certainty you cannot explain that it will not be easily silenced again. They say we're 3 days from Siena, Matteo comments during the midday break. We'll have real beds, women, and wine that doesn't taste like vinegar. You sit in the sparse shade of an oak tree, sharing a piece of hard cheese and the last of the bread provided by the monks. The heat has returned, though not with the same intensity as in previous weeks. An occasional light breeze offers moments of relief. I hear the commander will be negotiating new contracts there. Matteo continues, always more talkative than you. Some men will head north. Others will continue on to Rome. You chew methodically, considering this information. Siena means choice. Stay with the company or seek another path. After months of simply following orders and marching, where you are told, the idea of making a decision seems almost frightening. What will you do, Vincenzo? Matteo asks, his young eyes filled with genuine curiosity. Will you go on to Rome? You hesitate to answer, not out of strategy, but because you really don't know. Rome would mean more of the same, more marching, under the scorching sun, and more battles for causes you barely understand. It would mean more days imprisoned by your own steel. I haven't decided, you finally reply. Matteo looks disappointed by your vague answer. He is young and still sees choices as clear, distinct paths rather than the confusing mazes they really are. I'm going to Rome, he declares with youthful confidence. They say the Pope is gathering a great army. There may be true glory there. Glory. The word echoes in your mind like a cracked bell. But what does glory mean to a man who can barely breathe inside his own armor? What meaning does it have when your days are measured in drops of sweat and small victories against the heat? Glory is for troubadour songs, you say, the words escaping before you can stop them. In real life, there is only survival. Matteo looks at you, surprised by your unusually long response and bitter tone. For a moment he seems about to argue, to defend his youthful dreams, but something in his face, perhaps the obvious exhaustion and premature lines caused by years in the sun, makes him reconsider. Perhaps, he concedes, lowering his eyes to the bread in his hands, but without dreams of glory, what do we have left? The question hangs in the hot midday air, unanswered. The commander shouts orders to resume the march. You rise automatically, adjusting your helmets and checking your weapons. The conversation ends, but the words linger with you as you resume your place in the formation. What is left without dreams of glory? The answer is simple and terrible: reality. The real weight of steel, the real heat of the sun, the real pain of wounds that never fully heal, the real thirst that can never be fully quenched. And yet you continue, one step after another, one day after another, not for glory, not for wealth, perhaps not even for survival. But why? This question will haunt you for the rest of the day, weighing more heavily than your armor itself. First, Siena appears as a silhouette on the horizon, towers and walls against the evening sky. As the company draws nearer, details emerge. The imposing cathedral with its striped facade, the stone palaces, and the colorful flags fluttering in the breeze. Unlike the small villages and hamlets they have passed through in recent weeks, Siena is a real city, rich, powerful, and alive. Even from a distance, you can sense its energy, the pulse of thousands of lives intertwined within those walls. The city represents everything you are not: permanent, rooted, and prosperous. While your existence is constant movement, the city is stability. While you live on the border between life and death, Siena celebrates life to the full. When you arrive, the gates are open, guarded by soldiers in elegant uniforms that contrast with your worn, road-dirty armor. The commander speaks with the captain of the guard and presents documents and seals that guarantee your entry. The streets are full of people, merchants, artisans, nobles, and clergy, all mixed together in the chaotic ballet of urban life. Children run between the horses, legs laughing and pointing at the procession of armed men. Women watch from the windows, some curiously, others apprehensively. You feel exposed and vulnerable in a way that battles never made you feel before. In the field, armor is both protection and identity. Here, however, it is merely a symbol of your difference and alienation. After weeks on the silent roads, the sound of the city is deafening. Voices shouting prices and news, hammers striking anvils, wagon wheels on cobblestones, and bells calling for prayers. Inside your helmet, these sounds blend into a confusing cacophony that makes your head throb. The company is led to a large courtyard near the city walls, a space reserved for mercenaries and visiting soldiers. Tents have already been set up, and fires lit. It is a small camp within the city, a liminal space between the worlds of war and peace. When he finally dismounts and removes his helmet, the first thing that hits him is the smell, not the familiar odor of sweat, leather, and metal, but the aromas of the city: baking bread, exotic spices, sewage, incense, tanning leather, and roasting meat. It is both intoxicating and nauseating. "Freedom until dawn," announces the commander. "Tomorrow at noon, everyone here for new contracts and orders." The men quickly disperse, eager for baths, hot food, wine, and company. You linger for a moment, undecided. The city both calls to and repels you. After spending so much time on the road surrounded by open spaces and endless skies, the narrow streets and tall buildings seem like a new form of prison. Donato passes you, no longer wearing his armor and dressed in clean, simple clothes. "Come on, Vincenzo," he says, patting you on the shoulder. "There's a tavern in the Dyer's Quarter. The wine is decent, the food is better than road rations, and the women don't charge like the ones in the central square." You hesitate, but eventually agree with a nod. Maybe that's what you need, to be reminded that there's more to life than marching and fighting, that there's a world beyond the horizon defined by the cracks in your helmet. After removing your armor and washing off the worst of the road dirt, you follow Donato through the labyrinthine streets of Siena. The city is a living organism, pulsing with possibilities. For the first time in years, you allow yourself to feel something other than resignation. It's not hope, not yet. But perhaps it's the first step in that direction. The tavern is exactly as Donato described it, neither luxurious nor miserable, but somewhere in between, which attracts mercenaries, artisans, and small merchants. The air is thick with candle smoke, the smell of food and the cheap perfume of waitresses circulating among the tables. You sit in a corner with your back to the wall out of habit. Never expose yourself, always watch the entrances. Even without armor, your survival instincts remain. Donato orders wine and some kind of stew, quickly negotiating with the waitress, who seems to recognize him from previous visits. The wine arrives first, dark and full-bodied, without the vinegary taste of campaign rations. You drink slowly, letting the flavor linger on your tongue. It's a small luxury, but after months of deprivation, it seems almost obscene. To Siena, Donato toasts, raising his glass, where a man can be a man again, if only for one night. You silently return, the toast observing your surroundings. The other members of the company are scattered around the tavern. Some are already quite drunk and singing war songs with increasingly obscene lyrics. Matteo is among them, his youthful face flushed from the wine and excitement at finally reaching the city he had dreamed about during the march. The boy won't last until Rome, Donato comments, following your gaze. Too green, too eager to prove himself. You don't respond, but you agree internally. You've seen many like Matteo over the years, fiery young men who confuse bravado with recklessness and believe that armor makes them invincible. The stew arrives, mutton with vegetables in a thick broth, accompanied by freshly baked bread. The aroma makes your stomach growl painfully, reminding you how inadequate your diet has been. You eat with the same methodical efficiency with which you perform all tasks, though each bite is an almost forgotten pleasure. Have you decided? Donato asks between bites. North or south? You are caught off guard by the question, though. You know exactly what he means. The new contracts, the choice that lies ahead. Not yet, you reply, dipping bread into the broth. Donato studies your face for a moment. His experienced eyes see more than you would like to reveal. You're considering other options, aren't you, beyond the company? It's not an accusation. There is no judgment in his voice, only understanding. The understanding of a man who has probably had the same thoughts himself. Maybe, you admit, surprised by your own honesty. Donato nods and takes another sip of wine. How long has it been? 10 years with the company. 12, you correct him. 12 years, Donato repeats, letting the words hang between a you. That's long enough for any man. This comment opens the door to something you have rarely allowed yourself to consider. The real possibility of a different life. Not just a vague dream for the future, but an immediate, real choice. And what would you do, Donato continues, if you hung up your sword? Would you go back to San Miniato? It's a complex question. San Miniato is a name and a memory. It is no longer a home. Who would recognize you there? Who would welcome you? You are the baker's son who left to seek glory, returning a broken man with more scars than stories to tell. I don't know, you answer honestly. What about you? Have you ever thought about quitting? Donato smiles, revealing uneven teeth. Every single day, my friend. Every single day, I think about owning a small farm near Lucca with a few olive trees and maybe some vineyards. I think about a woman who is neither too young nor too old to share my bed, a few chickens, a pig, just enough to live on. The dream is simple, almost banal, yet it makes your own future seem even more nebulous. Why don't you do it? You ask. Donato's smile turns melancholy. Because dreaming about it is easier than doing it. Because I don't know how to be anything but a soldier. Because I'm afraid of discovering that peace is as difficult as war, just in different ways. The words strike something deep inside you. It's the unspoken fear that keeps you tied to the company, to the armor, to the life you know. How miserable it may be. But you, Donato continues, leaning over the table, You have other skills. You were a baker's son, weren't you? You know how to work with your hands and create things other than destruction. You look at your hands, calloused and scarred from wielding weapons. Could you relearn the delicate touch needed to knead bread? To cultivate grapes? To caress a woman without hurting her? Maybe, you say, more to yourself than to Donato. The night wears on. More wine is consumed. The conversations around you grow louder and more careless. Eventually, Donato drifts off to join a game of dice at another table, leaving you alone with your thoughts. For the first time in years, your thoughts are not just about surviving the next day, the next March, or the next summer. They're about possibilities, about choices, about futures. It is terrifying and liberating. You walk through the streets of Siena in the early morning when the city is still waking up. The air is cool and heavy with the smell of freshly baked bread from the bakeries that are already hard at work. Merchants are setting up their stalls in the market, chatting quietly as they arrange their goods. A lone priest hurries to the first Mass, his sandals clicking rhythmically on the stones. His steps have no definite destination. After a restless night filled with confusing dreams that mixed the past with the present, you simply needed to move. Unarmed and wearing only linen trousers and a simple tunic, you feel strangely exposed, like a snail without its shell. The city opens up around you like an illustrated book. The streets branch out in complex patterns, climbing up and down the hills on which Siena was built. Every corner reveals a new sight: a small chapel with faded frescoes, a fountain where women are gathering with buckets, and a palace with an elaborate coat of arms carved above the gate. You stop in front of a bakery, drawn by the familiar aroma wafting through the open door. Inside, a burly man is kneading dough on a floured table, his movements fluid and precise, the dance of someone who has performed the same task thousands of times. For a moment you see your father, his sleeves rolled up, his forearms powerful, his face completely focused as he feels the texture of the dough between his fingers. The memory is so vivid it almost hurts. The baker notices your presence and looks up. "Can I help you, sir?" "Pick up." The illusion is shattered. This is not your father. It's just an unknown baker in a strange city. "Just looking," you reply, suddenly realizing that you don't have any money to buy anything. The baker shrugs and goes back to his work. But something makes him stop again and look at you more closely. "Are you a soldier?" he asks, perhaps noticing your posture, the visible scars on your arms, and your ever-watchful gaze. You nod. "My brother served with the Florentines," the baker continues. "He never came back." After a heavy pause, he picks up a small, round loaf of bread that is still warm and holds it out to you. "Here, in memory of him." This unexpected gesture catches you off guard. You accept the bread, murmuring your thanks. The warmth penetrates your fingers, providing comfort and familiarity. When you bite into it, the taste evokes such powerful memories that they almost make you dizzy. The mornings in your father's bakery, the smell of yeast in the air, the simplicity of a life that now seems to belong to someone else. You walk away nodding your thanks and continue exploring the awakening city. You eat the bread slowly, savoring each bite. Eventually your steps lead you to the central square, the famous Campo di Siena, with its shell shape and the imposing Palazzo Pubblico dominating one side. The square is already bustling with merchants setting up their stalls for the day's trade. In the center, workers are erecting some kind of structure, preparations for a festival or tournament perhaps. "They're preparing for the Palio," says a voice beside you. You turn to see an elderly man sitting on a stone bench and watching the workers. His face is deeply wrinkled, and his clear eyes contrast with the tanned skin of someone who has spent their life in the sun. "The horse race," he continues, though you haven't asked. "Each contrada competes. It's the glory of Siena. You sit down next to him, drawn to the calmness emanating from the old man. For a moment, you sit in silence, watching the activity in the square. "You're not from here," the old man finally says. It's not a question. "I'm with a company of mercenaries," you reply. The old man nods, unsurprised. "I was a soldier too, long ago." You look at him with new interest, trying to imagine this frail man wielding a sword and shield and wearing armor. "How did you know it was time to stop?" you ask, the question escaping before you can stop yourself. The old man smiles, revealing a few teeth. "When I realized I was fighting out of habit, not conviction. When the sword began to weigh, heavier each day, not just on my arms, but on my soul." His words strike a chord deep within you, a truth that has been present for years, but which you have never allowed to fully emerge into consciousness. "And then?" you ask. "What did you do after you laid down your sword?" "I went home," the old man replies, his gaze lost in the distance. "I married the blacksmith's daughter. I had 3 children. I grew wheat and olive trees. I lived." The simplicity of his answer is almost painful. To live, as if it were so easy. "And you never regretted it?" The old man considers the question for a long moment. "I regretted it on days when the harvest was poor and the winter was harsh, when food was scarce. I regretted it when my eldest son died of fever and I couldn't afford better doctors." He pauses. "But I never regretted feeling the sun on my face, free from the weight of a helmet. I never regretted falling asleep next to a woman who knew my real name, not just the name they shouted at me in battle." You fall silent again, lost in your own thoughts. In the distance, the cathedral bell marks the hour. You stand up, remembering that you must be at the camp for the distribution of new contracts at noon. "Thank you," you say to the old man. He nods, his clear eyes meeting yours. "Remember, soldier, armor protects the body, but it can also imprison the soul." His words follow you as you walk away and cross the square, which is now bustling with activity under the rising morning sun. The camp is bustling when you return. Men form small groups and discuss the options presented by the commander animatedly. The mood is one of anticipation, not the nervous tension before a battle, but the excitement of possibilities and diverging paths. You locate your tent and begin to methodically examine your armor. It's a ritual you've performed thousands of times, but today your hands move hesitantly, as if handling not familiar metal but something strange and potentially dangerous. Donato emerges from a nearby tent, already fully equipped. His helmet is strapped to his belt, revealing a face that looks rested and resolute despite the night of drinking. "Have you decided?" he asks, without preamble. You continue polishing the breastplate of your armor, removing invisible stains with a worn cloth. "I think so," you reply, although the decision has only just formed in your mind, crystallized by the old man's words in the square. Donato waits for you to elaborate, but when the silence stretches on, he just nods. "I'm heading north," he says. "Milan offers good pay for experienced men to train their urban militia. No marching in the sun, no battles unless the city is attacked." You look at him, surprised. "I thought you dreamed of a farm in Lucca." Donato smiles humorlessly. "Dreams are for drunken nights, my friend." In the light of day, a man must be practical. He adjusts his sword in its belt. "And you, north or south?" "Neither," you reply, the words coming with surprising ease. "I think I've marched enough." For a moment, Donato seems genuinely shocked. Then a slow smile spreads across his scarred face. Vincenzo de San Miniato hanging up his sword, who would have thought it? There is no scorn in his voice, just a kind of reluctant admiration. It's as if you're about to accomplish something he never had the courage to do himself. "And what will you do? Go back to being a baker?" The question stops you in your tracks. The future, which was once a vague haze beyond the next contract, now demands a definitive shape. Be a baker again. The idea is both appealing and frightening. Your hands still remember the texture of the dough and the heat of the oven. But would they be able to create again After so many years of destruction? Maybe, you reply. Or maybe something different. I don't know yet. Donato nods, understanding your uncertainty. Well, whatever path you choose, may it be fresher than the roads we march together. He extends his hand and you shake it, a rare gesture of camaraderie between men who are used to communicating mainly through nods and grunts. The noon bell rings out across the city, echoing to the camp. It is time for roll call, time for choices. You leave your partially polished armor on the makeshift bed. For the first time in 12 years, you will march to the meeting without the weight of steel on your shoulders. The commander looks smaller without his ornate armor, standing on a makeshift platform, wearing only a leather doublet over a clean tunic. He resembles a merchant more than a leader of men at war. However, his voice retains the authority cultivated in dozens of battles. 3 paths lie before the company, he announces to the circle of men gathered around him. The Duke of Milan is offering contracts to 20 experienced men, generous pay, accommodation in the city, and mainly training duties. A murmur ripples through the crowd. Milan is wealthy and civilized and far from the current roots of conflict, an almost comfortable posting. The Republic of Florence seeks to reinforce its borders against Lucca, the commander continues. 30 men, regular pay? Probably. More action than in Milan. The murmurs grow louder. Florence means the possibility of real combat, loot, and bonuses for victories. But it also means more risk. Finally, the Pope in Rome requests an escort for pilgrims traveling south. 15 men, modest pay, but lodging in abbeys and monasteries along the route. It's light work, but less prestigious. The commander pauses, letting the options sink in. Then he unrolls a scroll. I will call each name. Declare your choice, or if you wish to terminate your contract with the company, now is the time to do so. Names are called. Choices are made. Most people choose Milan or Florence, with only a few opting for Rome. No one chooses to leave. Until Vincenzo de San Miniato. You step forward, aware of eyes turning towards you. It is not customary for men of an age and condition to fight to leave mercenary companies voluntarily. It's almost an admission of weakness or cowardice. I terminate my contract, Commander. The silence that follows is as thick as morning fog. The commander examines you for a long moment, his face impassive. 12 years of loyal service, he finally says. No desertions, no insubordination, no failures. In combat, he pauses. The company honors your decision, Vincenzo de San Miniato. Your final payment will be calculated to the day. There is a murmur of approval from the veterans, those who have served alongside you for years and know the price paid in both blood and sweat within the steel prison. The younger ones seem confused, even disdainful. They don't understand yet. You nod in thanks and return to your place. The ritual continues with more names being called and more choices being declared. But you barely listen. A strange lightness has taken hold of your body, as if you have already shed the armor you have worn throughout your adult life. When the roll call ends, the men disperse to prepare for the different journeys that will begin the following day. Some come over for brief farewells and silent handshakes. Occasionally, there is an awkward hug. 12 years create bonds, even among men trained not to form deep attachments. Donato is the last to approach. Where will you go now? The question catches you off guard. In the rush to make the decision, you haven't considered what to do next. Where, indeed? San Miniato, you reply, making the decision as you speak, to see what's left. Donato nods, satisfied. A man must know his roots before planting new seeds. He places a heavy hand on your shoulder. May you find what you seek, Vincenzo. And you, my friend, you reply, surprised by the emotion tightening your throat. May you find your farm in Lucca one day? Donato laughs, the sound harsh but genuine. Perhaps when these old joints can no longer bear the weight of armor. He taps his chest, producing a metallic sound. Until then, Milan will have to do. You part without another word. None are necessary. Men who have faced death together don't need elaborate speeches. Back in your tent, you stare at the armor that has been left on the bed, its pieces, organized. In a methodical fashion, resemble the remains of some dismembered creature. You run your fingertips over the cold metal, the worn straps, and the marks from repairs over the years. For a moment, doubt returns. This armor has protected you, defined. You and been your identity for longer than anything else in your adult life. To abandon it would be to abandon a part of yourself. But then you remember the heat, the sweat running down your back, the blurred vision under the merciless sun, your raw armpits, your bleeding feet inside your boots. You remember the old man's words in the square. Armor protects the body, but it can also imprison the soul. Your decision is made. San Miniato is a 3-day journey from Siena. You will travel on foot for 3 days, carrying only a backpack containing a change of clothes, supplies, and your final payment from the company. Enough coins to start a new life if you manage them carefully. The road is the same one you have traveled for years, but everything seems different without the weight of the armor. Sounds reach your ears clearly, unfiltered by the metal of your helmet. The wind touches your skin directly, cooling you in the hottest hours. Your steps are lighter, faster, and almost joyful. On the first day, you feel vulnerable. Without steel to protect you, you feel exposed and vulnerable. Your eyes constantly scan the horizon, looking for threats. Your hand instinctively searches for the hilt of the sword that is no longer there, sold along with your armor to add to your small treasure. On the second day, the anxiety subsides. You start to notice details of the landscape that had previously gone unnoticed. The precise flight of a hawk hunting over the fields, the complex pattern of vineyards on the hills, and the different shades of green that paint Tuscany in late summer. By the third day, something close to peace has settled in. Your body, so accustomed to constant suffering, now moves with an ease that seems almost indecent. You find yourself occasionally humming half-forgotten melodies from childhood, songs your mother sang while she worked. Then, on the afternoon of the third day, you catch sight of San Miniato in the distance. The city stands on a hill, its towers and walls silhouetted against the evening sky. It looks much as you remember, yet also strangely different, smaller perhaps, or simply less imposing to the man you have become. Your steps slow as you approach. Anxiety returns, more intense than before. What will you find there? Who will recognize you after 12 years? What remains of the life you left behind? For a moment, you consider turning back. You could head for Pisa or Livorno, big cities where you could disappear and start over without the weight of memories and expectations. It would certainly be easier. But something drives you forward. It's not courage. You've already learned that survival rarely has anything to do with bravery. It's something more basic, more primal. The need to close a circle, to return to the starting point and see if there's still a way forward. When you arrive, the gates of San Miniato are open, guarded by local militiamen who barely glance at you, just another traveler returning at dusk. Inside the walls, the city goes about its end-of-day routine. Merchants close their stalls in the market, artisans put away their tools, children run and play in the streets before being called in for dinner. You walk slowly, taking in every detail. Some facades have been painted different colors. A new chapel has been built near the market square. The old tree that you remember is no longer there, leaving an empty space that feels like a wound in your memory. Your feet follow a familiar path, turning corners without hesitation, as if the 12 years of absence were only a day. Then you arrive at your father's bakery. The wooden sign still displays the same name, Pont Bellucci. It's your family name, and you haven't used it in so long that it sounds strange even in your thoughts. The door is closed, but light escapes through the window cracks. Someone is inside. You take a deep breath, trying to calm your racing heart. Then you raise your hand and knock. 3 firm raps on the worn wood. For a long moment, there is no answer. You are about to knock again when the door opens. A middle-aged woman stands in the doorway. Her face is flushed from the heat of the oven, and she has flour on her apron. Her dark hair is tied back in a practical bun. You don't recognize her immediately. Then something in her dark, intense eyes triggers a memory. Lucia, the butcher's daughter who used to work across the street. The girl who used to tease you for being a baker's son and say that you smelled like yeast. "Can I help you?" she asks, polite but cautious. You open your mouth, but no sound comes out. How can you explain who you are? How can you condense 12 years of absence into words that make sense? "I'm looking for Antonio Bellucci," you finally say, your voice hoarse with emotion. "The baker?" A shadow passes over her face. "Antonio died 3 winters ago. Fever." She pauses, studying your face more closely. "Were you related to him?" The news hits you like a physical blow. Your father is dead. Of course, the possibility had always been there, but hearing the confirmation is different. It means that the forgiveness you came here seeking will never be granted. The words left unsaid will remain so forever. "Your son," you reply, your voice little more than a whisper. "I'm Vincenzo." Her eyes widen. For a moment, she seems unable to believe it. Then slowly, recognition dawns on her face. "Vincenzo," she repeats, testing the name. "The boy who left to become a knight?" You nod, unable to speak. "Everyone thought you were dead," she continues, "after so many years without news." "I almost was," you say, "many times." She opens the door wider to reveal the interior of the bakery. It feels both familiar and strange. The large stone oven where your father worked, the wooden tables polished smooth from years of use, the utensils hanging on the walls. But there are changes, too. New equipment, a different layout, and small feminine touches that your mother never added. "The bakery?" you begin hesitantly. "How did it come to you?" "Your father had no other children," Lucia replies. "I had been working for him for years after my father died. When he fell ill, he made me promise that I would keep the name and continue baking bread as he had taught me." She pauses. "It was his last wish." You nod, feeling a contradictory mix of emotions: sadness at the loss, relief that your father's legacy has continued, and a twinge of jealousy that this woman was at his side in his final moments. "And now?" Lucia asks, her voice softening. "Have you come back to claim your inheritance?" The question catches you off guard. Inheritance? You didn't come back for money or property? What did you come back for exactly? "No," you reply firmly. "The bakery is yours now. You kept your promise, you kept the name. It's what my father wanted." Something relaxes in her face, tension that you hadn't even realized was there. "Then why did you come back, Vincenzo Bellucci?" The question hangs in the air between you, loaded with possibilities. Why indeed? To close a circle? To find redemption? To remember who you were before the steel consumed you? "To find a place where I don't burn inside," you answer honestly. Lucia watches you for a long moment, as if trying to see beyond the scars, sun-kissed skin, and eyes that have seen too much. Then, to your surprise, she smiles, a smile that transforms her face and reveals traces of the girl you once knew. "Well," she says, opening the door wider, "the oven has just cooled down, but tomorrow I need to bake 30 loaves before dawn. An extra pair of hands would be useful, if you still remember how it's done." The offer is casual, almost unassuming, but you both know what it means. Not just a job, but a way back into the world you left behind, and a chance to rediscover parts of yourself you thought you had forgotten. "I remember enough," you reply, feeling an unexpected smile form on your lips. "The rest, I can relearn." The first few weeks at the bakery are a rediscovery of your body. Muscles accustomed to wielding swords and bearing the weight of Armor relearn the precise movements needed to knead bread. Your hands, calloused by years of war, rediscover the delicacy needed to shape dough. Tense shoulders slowly begin to relax. The work is hard, starting hours before dawn when the city is still asleep. But it's a different kind of difficulty. The intense heat of the oven is productive. It transforms raw materials into food, not suffering. Sweat still runs down your back, but now it's a sign of creation rather than desperate survival. Lucia is a demanding but fair teacher. She corrects your mistakes firmly, but also recognizes your progress. Gradually, you establish a rhythm. She at the front of the shop dealing with customers, and you at the back focused on production. At first, some customers are suspicious. The missing son of old Antonio, back after years as a mercenary? What kind of man would abandon his father's bakery to wield a sword? What kind of violence could those hands have committed? But the bread speaks for itself. Little by little, mistrust turns to acceptance, then welcome. The bread that comes out of your hands carries something of your father, a quality that Lucia recognizes immediately, though she never explains exactly what it is. You have his hands, she says one morning, watching you shape small loaves for the market, the touch, the sensitivity to the dough. This casual comment, made as she prepares batches for the oven, hits you with unexpected force. For years, your hands have only been used for killing and survival. The idea that they still carry something of your father, something creative and nourishing, is almost unbearable in its beauty. At night, alone in the small room that Lucia has provided for you at the back of the bakery, you examine your hands by the light of a single candle. The scars are there, marks from swords that slipped, from armor straps that cut into flesh, from years of violent use. But beneath the scars are the same hands that learnt to knead bread at the age of 8. The same hands that your father patiently guided, teaching you to sense when the dough was ready. Perhaps they can still create instead of destroy. The days pass, turning into weeks. The bakery routine becomes your new normal. Wake up before dawn, light the oven, prepare the dough, bake, sell, clean up, sleep, repeat. This cycle offers a simplicity that brings a calm you haven't experienced. In years, there are no commanders shouting orders, no forced marches under the relentless sun. There is no constant fear of the next battle, injury, or death, narrowly avoided. Just flour, water, yeast, and salt. The basic elements of life combined by human hands to provide sustenance. One particularly hot afternoon, as the last batch of bread cools on the shelves, Lucia finds him sitting on the steps at the back of the bakery, watching the sun begin its descent behind the San Miniato hills. "Do you still miss it?" she asks, sitting down beside him. There is no need to specify what. They both know. You consider the question honestly. Do you miss the camaraderie forged in shared danger? Sometimes. The adrenaline rush of battle, when time seems to slow down and every movement becomes instinctive? Occasionally, but the armor, the relentless heat, the sweat that never dried completely, the wounds that never healed, the endless marches, the silent despair, and the feeling of being cooked alive day after day? No, you reply simply. I don't. Lucia smiles, seemingly pleased by your answer. That's good, she says. It means you chose correctly. You sit, in comfortable silence, watching the shadows lengthen across the small garden behind the bakery. From somewhere in the city, a church bell tolls the hour. A cat prowls along the neighbor's wall, moving with elegance and deliberation as it hunts. In the afternoon sun. Vincenzo, Lucia begins, her tone different now, more hesitant. There's something I've been wanting to ask you. You turn to her, noticing the sudden seriousness on her face. Do you intend to stay, in San Miniato, I mean, at the bakery? You weren't expecting the question, but it still catches you off guard. These past few weeks have been a kind of trial period for her to assess whether she can trust you. and for you to figure out if there's still a place for you in this simpler life. If you want me here, you reply, realizing the truth of your words as you speak them. Yes, I intend to stay. Her face softens. Something passes between you, unspoken but clearly felt. A possibility, a future that neither of you had ever imagined before, yet which now seems as natural as the sun rising over the Tuscan hills. The name on the sign is still Bellucci, she finally says. It's always been your place, Vincenzo. It just waited for you to be ready to return. Autumn arrives in San Miniato, bringing cooler winds and the sweet scent of grapes being harvested in the surrounding vineyards. Mornings are shrouded in low fog that slowly dissipates as the sun rises. Afternoons have a golden quality. The light is softer and less merciless than in summer. The bakery thrives. Your partnership with Lucia is perfectly balanced. She has business acumen and excellent customer relations, and you have rediscovered your ability to bake breads that resemble your father's, but with your own personal touch. The sign above. The door has been repainted and still displays Pan Bellucci, but now with a small addition, father and son, a silent tribute to the man who started it all. One particularly cold morning when the first frost of the year covers the streets of San Miniato like sprinkled sugar, you work in the cozy warmth of the bakery. The contrast between the cold outside and the heat of the oven creates a sense of sanctuary, a small universe of aromas and textures protected from the outside world. As you knead a special batch for the Harvest Festival in the main square, you hear the doorbell ring. An early customer, most likely. Lucia usually answers it, but she has gone out to negotiate flour prices with a new supplier. Wiping your hands on your apron, you walk to the front of the shop. The man standing there is not a regular customer. He is tall and broad-shouldered, with the unmistakable posture of someone who has spent years carrying armor. Even in civilian clothes, a thick wool tunic and well-worn leather trousers, his profession is evident to trained eyes. Vincenzo? The man asks, removing the hood that was partially covering his face. You recognize him immediately. Matteo, the young knight, not so young now with a fresh scar cutting across his left cheek, smiles uncertainly. So, the rumors are true. The best knight in the company really did become a baker. There is no scorn in his voice, only a kind of bewildered admiration. You invite him in and close the front door briefly to ensure privacy. In the small back room, you offer him wine and warm bread. Simple, but genuine hospitality. How did you find me, you ask, once you are both seated? Donato, Matteo replies. He heard stories about the baker's son who returned to San Miniato after years as a mercenary. Not many follow that path. You nod, not really surprised. News travels between mercenary companies like wind between mountains. Unpredictable, but inevitable. And Rome, you ask, was it what you wanted? A shadow passes over Matteo's face. He unconsciously touches the scar on his cheek. Not exactly. The Pope was more interested in politics than prayers. We ended up fighting in skirmishes that were not at all sacred. He pauses and takes a sip of wine. That's when I realized you were right, about glory, about troubadour songs versus reality. You are surprised by this admission. You remember the fiery young man who was so certain that Rome would bring him the glory he sought. And now, you ask, where are you going? Matteo looks around the bakery, taking in the details. The flour. In the air, the rows of bread and the welcoming warmth of the oven. Actually, I was hoping you could help me with that. Me? Do you need an apprentice? The question is half joking, half serious. I've always been good with my hands. I learn quickly. You watch him, trying to determine whether the request is genuine. In the young man's eyes, you see something familiar. The same weariness and search that brought you back to San Miniato. The same need to find a place where you won't burn out. Work starts before dawn, you say, testing his determination. It's hot and demanding, and the profits are modest, compared to marching under the sun with 30 kilos of steel on your back. Matteo smiles. Sounds like paradise. You consider the proposal. The bakery is growing. An extra pair of hands would be useful. Besides, there is something poetic about helping another man find his way back from steel to flour. We need to consult Lucia, you decide. She's as much a partner as she is an owner. And more than that, according to what people are saying. Around town, Matteo comments with a mischievous smile. You feel your face flush, not from the heat of the oven, but from something more personal. The rumors about you and Lucia aren't unfounded, although nothing has been formally announced yet. You'll stay until she returns, you say, ignoring the teasing. Then we'll decide. Matteo nods, satisfied. You return to work and glance at him as he marvels at the simplicity of the bakery. His eyes express the admiration of someone who has rediscovered that there are other ways to live besides war. In a way, he reflects the man you were a few months ago, fresh out of armor, still bearing its ghostly weight, and searching for a way back to peace. And maybe you think returning to the dough waiting for your hands, guiding him, is part of your own path forward. Winter slowly gives way to spring. The fields around San Miniato transform from brown to vibrant green. Wildflowers dot the hillsides like colorful brushstrokes on a green canvas. The air carries promises of growth, renewal, and possibilities. The Bellucci Bakery gains a new side door to accommodate the increase in deliveries. The old work table has been replaced by a larger one, enabling 3 people to work simultaneously. A small additional oven has been built for special breads and pastries, an expansion that has already proven lucrative in the first few weeks. Matteo has adapted surprisingly well to life as a baker. His hands, once more accustomed to wielding a sword than shaping dough, now move with growing confidence between flour and yeast. He still bears some marks from his previous life. He wakes, up startled by sudden noises, and instinctively searches for non-existent weapons when surprised. However, these moments are becoming rarer with each passing week. After some initial hesitation, Lucia accepted the new apprentice with the same practical firmness that she applies to everything. With your help and Lucia's guidance, Matteo has found his place in the small family that is the bakery. This morning, you are working alone. Lucia is at the church finalizing arrangements for the wedding that will take place in 2 weeks. Your wedding. Matteo has left to deliver orders to the most distant farms in the new cart, which makes it easier to transport larger quantities. The silence in the bakery is comfortable, punctuated only by the crackling of the oven and the rhythmic sound of your hands working the dough. You feel a deep satisfaction in this moment, in the simplicity of the work, in the tangible creation process, and in the certainty that you are exactly where you should be. As you prepare a special batch of olive and herb bread, a recipe of yours that has quickly become popular with customers, you reflect on how far you have come, from the stifling heat inside the armor to the productive heat of the oven, from the endless march under the merciless sun to the purposeful steps inside the small bakery. From daily survival to a meaningful life. The door opens, bringing in a rush of cool spring air. Lucia enters, her face flushed from her walk, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. Her eyes meet yours, and the smile she offers hints at a whole future. The priest confirmed everything, she says, leaning in to kiss your cheek quickly. 2 weeks, just as we planned. You nod, feeling a wave of heat that has nothing to do with the oven. This is a different kind of heat, not the punishing heat of the sun on steel or the productive heat of the oven baking bread. It's an inner heat, born of certainty and belonging. What's that, you ask, pointing to the flowers. For the table, she replies, placing them in a small vase. I thought they'd bring a little spring inside. It's a simple, almost trivial gesture, but to you, it represents everything that this new life means. The attention to small pleasures, the appreciation of everyday beauty, and the creation of a home rather than just a place to rest between journeys. Perfect, you say, and she smiles, knowing you mean much more than just the flowers. Later, as the sun begins to set, you step out onto the back steps of the bakery, the same place where, months ago, you decided to settle down. The air is soft, carrying the scent of the flowering vines in the distant hills. The towers of San Miniato stand out against the reddish sky on the horizon, looking familiar and comforting. You hold your hands out in front of you and examine them in the golden light of dusk. The scars are still there, marks of a previous life that will never completely disappear. But now there is also flour under your fingernails and small burns from the oven, signs of a life of creation rather than destruction. Occasionally, on particularly hot days, you still feel the ghost of the armor, the weight of the metal, the pressure of the helmet, and the suffocating heat. These are memories that will never leave you completely, just like the scars. But when sweat runs down your back as you work near the oven, it's different now. The heat has a purpose. The effort has meaning. It's not just about survival, but about nourishment, for others and for your own soul. You take a deep breath of the afternoon air, filling your lungs completely. There is no helmet to restrict your breathing. There is no armor compressing your diaphragm. Just the open air flowing in and out at your body's natural rhythm. From inside the bakery, you can hear Lucia explaining something to Matteo and her light laughter echoing off the stone walls. Sounds of life, sounds of home. In the distance, the church bell tolls, marking the hour of the Ave Maria. Shadows lengthen in the small garden behind the bakery. A gentle breeze rustles the leaves of the olive tree that you planted in autumn. Still small, but growing a little each day, you stand up and stretch your tired muscles after an honest day's work. Tomorrow, it will all begin again. The flour, the water, the yeast, and the salt. The basic elements transformed into sustenance by your hands. This simple, yet profound cycle has become your life. As you return inside to the golden light of the bakery and the voices of the people who have become your family, you know with absolute certainty that this warmth is worth enduring. A warmth that builds rather than consumes, a warmth that nourishes rather than burns. Ultimately, it allows you to live without burning inside.